This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. Mr. Mills, you started off by saying that it is extraordinary that you would generally have, if I may say, the middle managers, not the top officials. Yeah, that absolutely is extraordinary. But what's also extraordinary is that Canadians paid $54 million for the ArriveCan app. What's even more extraordinary than that is the RCMP investigation we have now, which has allegations of forged resumes, identity theft, collusion, and fraudulent contracting. So, I mean, that's really extraordinary. What's also extraordinary, Mr. Mills, is that this government has a history, actually, of not listening to women, for letting the men speak for women. You can talk to Jane Philpotts if you want to about that. You could talk to Jody Rayson-Wilbode about that. You could also talk to Selena Sajar-Chavez. And finally, I'll say, Mr. Mills, we originally invited these three women, understanding that they would be perfectly capable of responding for themselves. And if you don't mind me saying so, this committee actually has a history, unfortunately, of senior executives within the government not necessarily telling us the truth in this committee. And unfortunately, I think it's a result of their political masters, but that's certainly a deeper conversation. So with all of that, Mr. Mills, I do believe...
Je pense, compte tenu de tout cela, que nous devons peut-être en tenir compte pour les trois personnes qui sont impliqués, dont nous avons demandé la comparution aujourd'hui.
As such,
Sorry, one moment, please. We're in
Thank you.
translation.
Yep.
Interpreter's mistake, wrong channel. Apologies.
30 seconds. I'll make sure the time is reset. Go ahead.
okay, so, pardon me, so that leaves me with 4 minutes and 30 seconds? Okay, thank you so much. So, Mr. Johns, what I was saying, what I was trying to explain to the two witnesses that we originally had not invited was that, unfortunately, Mr. Johns, as you well know, we have a history in this committee of senior government executives not being forthright with us, not necessarily telling us the truth. I guess in this room I can say, frankly, lying to us, as was evidenced by the story recently in the Globe and Mail from Bill Curry. So you will forgive us then, please, if we direct our questions to the three other individuals, Ms. Durgan, Ms. Chan, and Ms. Mansour here today, and I'll start now. Ms. Chan, why did you determine Bottler's contract to be between Bottler and the subcontractor?
That will start off with an investigation on our part once we receive the first complaint from Ms. Studd alleging that her name as well as the name of Mr. Moravev were used in a TA without their consent, and work was being conducted and the work was paid to the contractor on file on the contract, which is Dalian and Corotics in joint venture. So from when we inquire further with the representative of Corotics, they informed us that in fact both resources were provide the
You're doing great. Keep going. Thank you.
The work provided from the resources were provided from a third party, which was GC Strategies. From our perspective, because Dalian and Corotics did comply with what we asked for, there was nothing that was determined out of the ordinary from our audit. They did not actually breach any contract or any terms to the contract. From then on, it's a dispute between the resources, GC Strategies, and the contractor. And Canada has no purview in this dispute.
Okay, I do disagree with that. I do believe that the information that I have here states that in any subcontract, other than a subcontract referred to in paragraph 2A, the contractor must, unless the contracting authority agrees in writing, ensure that the subcontractor is bound by conditions compatible with and in the opinion of the contracting authority not less favorable to Canada than the conditions of the contract, with the exception of the requirements under the Federal Contractors Program for Employment Equity, which only apply to the contractor. So the information that I have here doesn't necessarily corroborate with that. But Ms. Manser, what made you confirm with Ms. Chan that the issue was between the contractor and the resources?
Our contract is with Coradix and Dalian. Those two resources came to light as Coradix had subcontracting to GC Strategies, and GC Strategies proposed them as resources. So we have no stand in to interfere in subcontracting because it's not the prime contractor with whom we have the contract.
Yeah, you certainly always have standing when you're dealing with taxpayer money. Ms. Chan, what was your understanding of the situation when you wrote Ms. Julie Prudhomme of Coradix about TA number 2021002043?
Are you thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Are you asking me from my understanding
as to what was going on when you wrote with the uncertainty of this situation?
Okay, please keep in mind that the only information that was brought on to PSPC was the email, was a complaint from Ms. Stutt. So the email states that her name, as well as Mr. Moravev, were used without consent or knowledge to this particular TA. Obviously, we want to investigate this because their claim is, frankly, quite severe.
Yeah, that is our time.
Thank you, Chair.
I
Mr.
previously
Jones.
told this committee how much I value the procurement strategy for Indigenous business, and I think we all should, and how critical Indigenous leadership and involvement in procurement is. It's something New Democrats have been fighting hard for, especially in procurement opportunities that directly affect Indigenous communities. I want to make sure what's happening with these set-asides, but what I've heard, it doesn't seem like it is what's supposed to be. PSPC's rules for the program are rightly set up to make sure that work doesn't simply get subcontracted to non-Indigenous entities. But when I asked Dalian about how they subcontract Indigenous set-aside contracts, I was appalled by their answers. They did not acknowledge the requirements for subcontractors to be Indigenous. In fact, Mr. Yao, said the rules allow us to hire pretty much whoever we want. He also told us that the Indigenous set-aside requirements are audited on every joint venture Dalian and Coradix do. Is it true that this is being audited on every joint venture they do? And is it true that Indigenous Services Canada has audited the bottler work in particular, as Mr. Yao claimed?
Yeah, we're out of time. Is it a quick yes or no, Mr. Mills?
It's a quick answer. Mr. President, you'd have to direct that question to Indigenous Services Canada, who administers that program.
Okay, Mr. Brock for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Chan, does PSPC have its own legal department?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. We consulted with Legal at Justice Canada.
Okay, so nothing internal? Do you have a particular lawyer that you deal with at the DOJ?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. There's a reason why I asked you that. So I want to go through a thread of emails between yourself and Ritika Dutt. She brought to your attention on May 10th, 2023, a number of concerns that Coradix and Dalian were using their names as resources without their knowledge and consent and received payments from the government under the TA, that during the bidding process, they falsely claimed that they had been in contact with Bottler and sought their input. An ATIP with CBSA confirmed that there was no fixation of status of personnel on file, that they in fact filed legal notice to the contractor to produce the document, and they failed to comply. They sought your help to compel the contractor to produce the document. There are elements of criminality in that email, that not only is there potential breach of contract and regulations with respect to the TA, but we have elements of fraud and forgery. did you get a sense that there was a red flag in this and whether or not you passed this on to the GOJ for consultation? Yes or no?
We did pass along what we found, and we were in constant consultation throughout the course of this investigation.
Did you consult the DOJ in relation to that email?
Yes.
You did? Did you get a legal opinion?
Yes.
Okay. And the legal opinion, without getting into specifics, but allowed you to continue pursuing that documentation that they requested?
Well, we had.
Yes or no?
Well, our first and foremost priority was to protect Canada and to investigate whether or not if the allegations of fraud from the prime contractor occurred.
Yes. Okay. So you sent an email to Julie Prudhomme on May the 26th requesting information from the contract regarding the allegations. May 26th, you received a further email from Bottler that they were never contracted by Cordex to provide any feedback on the TA, did not provide recommendations on any resources, that the mandatory requirements table for herself that was submitted with the TA significantly inflated her work experience and not reflective of her actual work experience. She did not agree or consent to be named on the TA or for the work to be implemented. Again, the specter of criminality. And now we have got the specter of a forged resume. Another red flag. Did you send that particular email to the GOJ for consultation?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Now, we already know what the evidence was, okay? Christian Firth has testified, and his illogical fantasy of simply making a mistake could have been believed if there was one modification to Ritika Dutt's resume. But memory serves me correct, without looking at the transcript, that he had attempted on at least 5, if not 6 occasions to deliberately manipulate the work experience so that when they inputted that data on the required forms, that they would qualify for funding. That is not only forgery, that is fraud. So my question to you is, why did you not just shut down immediately this operation between GC Strategies, Cordex, and Dalian against the specter of criminality? It's obvious. Was it not obvious to you? I'm not asking Mr. Mills, I'm asking Ms. Chan.
All right. Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Again, our priority was to investigate the allegations made to Dalian or Cordex. When we asked Dalian to provide documentations that they did receive payments from CBSA, and they did pay out, as we found out later, that they were provided the resources from GC Strategies.
Okay, I'm not talking about that. You have a specter now of fraudulent resumes. Did you go to GC Strategies? Did you go to Cordex and say, what is going on here? You are misleading the government. You are abusing taxpayer monies. Did you do that, Ms. Chan? Ms. Chan?
Very briefly, please.
I'm analyzing data, and from what we observed was that Dalian and Cordex were obtained those documents from GC Strategies. What we found was that there was nothing out of the ordinary with the contractors.
Thanks, Ms. Chan.
I just want to clarify something that was stated earlier. It's my understanding that you've agreed to come, but you've also asked for your colleagues to be here as well. Is that correct? Were they told, but did they say they wanted to come, or did you request them to be here? Like, how did that come to be? Ms. Durgan?
We're just coming as a representative of the 5 of us for PSPC with all of our different, expertise, if you will.
Right.
And levels. So. And
do you feel comfortable that the other 2 are here? Because we only asked for the 3 of you, but I just want to make certain that it's something that are not uncomfortable having. Like this, my understanding was that you've asked for some backup in case it got more complex.
No, we appreciate the support, and we have no issue with them being present with us.
But is this an investigation around ArriveCan?
Thank you for the question. No, it's not.
There is, however, a review, an internal review, and there's also a review being done by the RCMP in regards to this particular issue with regards to bottlers' allegations. Have you been contacted by RCMP?
I have not.
Ms. Mansour, have you been contacted by RCMP?
Not yet.
Ms. Durgan?
I have not.
Gentlemen, have anybody contacted you regarding this issue?
No.
So PSPC is also responsible for ensuring that contractors qualify for task authorization. So Ms. Dutt and Mr. Moore, each had 7 years of relevant experience. They needed 10 years to qualify for the work, and fraudulent qualifications were submitted for them without their knowledge, which you heard about at previous testimony of this committee. Have you figured out how this happened, who is responsible, and how will you make sure it doesn't happen again? And are you going to check GC Strategy's previous submissions to find out if this was done for other contracts?
For the question, I think as has been indicated before, there's an RCMP investigation. There is also an investigation within CBSA to look at this specific instance to see how this took place. I will say that we are very concerned and very interested in ensuring that the integrity of the procurement system. We are looking at these instruments. We're looking at all of our professional services contracting mechanisms to look at how can we ensure that they are above reproach, that they are effective, and that they don't allow these kinds of things to happen in the future.
I'm going to go back to the fact that I cited that there's no limit, and you confirmed that there is no limit on commissions. So we could see half of the contract tendering going out to commissions. Why is it that PSPC has not been able to hire or recruit a human resource recruitment specialist for IT and pay them a good wage? I mean, the GC Strategies has made upwards 15 to 30% on their over $50 million in government contracts. Let's call it they made $10 million between two people that aren't even specialists in IT. This is a problem. If PSPC looking at how they're going to change this model, and I actually can see why they can't find anyone, because it's way better to be doing and more lucrative at what GC Strategies is doing. This has to be fixed.
Mr. President, I do take umbrage with the fact that there's no limit. As we've mentioned before, this is a competitive environment. People, the ultimate IT experts that are doing the work with the necessary experience and skills will not work for zero. They actually demand a wage. But the
recruitment specialists are the ones that are taking the cut. I'm not talking about the workers. They're being exploited, clearly. The contractors, the subcontractors are being exploited. They're being exploited by these recruitment companies. Are you going to fix this recruitment process so that it's in-house instead of using these headhunters that are just milking the Canadian taxpayer?
That is our time. Perhaps you can get back to us on Mr. Johnson's next round. Mr. Barrett, please.
I'd like to start with Mr. Mills. Were any contracting rules broken on the ArriveCan app, yes or no?
No.
Were the contracts given to GC Strategies good value, yes or no?
Mr. President, I'm not in a position to assess the value for money of those contracts.
Okay, so the Government of Canada briefed you for this committee, and the documents on your website say, on the fees charged by GC Strategies for managing these contracts, the rates were reviewed by PSPC officials and they were deemed fair and reasonable based on the knowledge of the commodity. So do you or don't you agree with your department's briefing materials for you in advance of meetings here at the Government Operations Committee for the House of Commons?
Mr. Chair, I would agree that the fees charged were reasonable.
Thank you very much. So to be clear, PSPC thinks that it's fair value to pay GC Strategies, a two-person IT staffing company, to get paid $11 million to use the advanced tools of LinkedIn direct message and Google searches for the ArriveCan app. So you think that that's good value? Yes or no question, sir?
Mr. Chair, $11 million went to pay for IT specialists as well as the people that
we're going to circle back to your briefing materials that said you believe it's good value, so we'll take that as a yes. They got paid millions and millions of dollars for this boondoggle. And the position of PSPC is that this is good value. The previous member asking questions wondered, why wouldn't you just hire someone to do this in-house? I have full confidence that the caliber of people working in Canada's public service are able to use tools well more advanced than the ones that the principals at this organization said that they use to earn their millions off of struggling taxpayers. Did anyone from your department who worked on ArriveCan receive bonuses? Yes or no?
Receive bonuses? And executives, yes, during the period of this time, there would have been executives who received bonuses.
So the government's of the position that this is fair value. $11 million to a two-person staffing firm who did no work on this app, and we're to be told that the contracting system is fair. You know, a previous member said, well, they can't inflate the price. Well, obviously the price is inflated when there's the ability for ghost contractors and middlemen to make millions of dollars by subbing out the work and never doing a keystroke themselves. The relationship between this Liberal government, senior government officials, and insiders, consultants, and lobbyists it's incredibly frustrating for me, but the messages that I'm hearing from Canadians is that they find it that it's disgusting. We have Canadians who are struggling. We have, over the last 8 years, rents have doubled. Mortgage payments are up by 151%. More than 2 million monthly users of food banks, a third of those are children. And everything that has happened with the ArriveCan app and the responses that we're getting that this is fair value for Canadians' money, this is why Canadians have lost faith in the head of government, the Prime Minister. This is why they are losing faith in their institutions, because it's not reasonable to say, I don't find it reasonable or credible that we can hear that, well, it's fair value. You know, there's no room for them the contractors to bid up higher commissions. The project shouldn't have cost $54 million if a couple of yo-yos in a basement using Google are able to collect $11 million. So if you need specialists on how to find some savings, I'm sure that there's people who are a lot smarter than me who can find ways other than that big red circle that I just drew around the $11 million. I don't have any more questions.
What's the timer? Thank you, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. Ms. Durgan, I understand that you were the signing authority for ArriveCan with GC Strategies. Is that correct?
So signing authority in what sense?
You were the person who signed for the oversaw the contract from PSPC side.
So there were several contracts that I did work on, yes. And I did have a certain delegation of authority, but I also received approval authority depending on the value of the requirements. Depending on the value, maybe what level I would go to, whether it be ADM or senior director.
Okay. Do you know who was responsible for making the decision to choose GC Strategies over Deloitte for the ArriveCan contract?
For the initial ArriveCan contract, it was CBSA that approached us with a procurement strategy for sole sourcing, and they presented GC Strategies to PSPC.
Who was the person from CBSA who brought that to you?
I don't know who brought it to us directly from CBSA. We received a package from them, but I don't know who made the decision. I have no oversight.
It is a matter of dispute that has led various CBSA officials to accuse each other of lying in terms of who actually made the decision. Does anybody on the panel know or have any information that will help us know who made that initial decision? No. Okay. To your knowledge, was Deloitte, quote unquote, in the penalty box?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay. Would you have signed contracts with Deloitte around the same time that you were signing the contract for ArriveCan?
I would have to go back and look at that time frame, but I mean, I work on a lot of contracts.
Okay.
But
I guess I'm not understanding what the question is or what the correlation is between whether or not I signed anything with Deloitte with GC Strategies.
The context is that a bid was put in by GC Strategies and by Deloitte for ArriveCan. And the decision was made to go with ArriveCan on the basis that allegedly Deloitte was quote unquote in the penalty box, which meant that contrary to the claims of Mr. Mills that this is a competitive situation, it wasn't a competitive situation. Deloitte was allegedly excluded from consideration for reasons unknown, and that meant GC Strategies was selected.
One moment, Mr. Generals. Yes, sir. Go ahead. If it's a point of order, please, a real one.
Well, I know it's not a real one, but just as a clarification,
Okay.
I think it was Butler.
Come on. He admits it's not a real point of order. Just be quiet and let me answer the question.
All of
us, Mr. Jahari.
All of us,
Thank you
please stick to real point of orders.
It's pretty disgraceful there. Chair, can I get some clarity then on the issue of penalty box? As far as you know, nobody was in the penalty box. Signing contracts with Deloitte was fine and permitted during this time. Can I actually talk to the people who do the frontline work? Thanks.
Sure. I have no knowledge of Deloitte being in a penalty box.
Okay. Mr. Mills, very quickly, do you have any knowledge of Deloitte being in a penalty box?
Mr. Chair, I do not have any knowledge.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Would you be able to, Ms. Durgan, provide us with detailed information about, for the ArriveCan contract specifically, which companies got certain amounts of money? How much went to Carotics? How much went to Dalian? How much went to GC Strategies? How much and how much went to other subcontract entities? You have all that information?
I do not have that information.
Okay. Does anybody have that information in the government?
Mr. Chair, we would have the information of contract values that were awarded, but how much actually was expended and some of the task authorizations would have to come from CBSA.
Okay. We seem to have gotten the runaround a little bit, so I hope there's maybe agreement from the committee to request that information from both entities. How much money went to each entity? We can request the information from CBSA and PSBC, and whoever has it will give it to us. Is that agreeable?
More specific, just for the clerk, so she can note it down.
Yeah, I meid like the breakdown of how much, as part of the $54 million that was spent on ArriveCan, how much went to each company. Who were the people that received money as part of that contract?
Just one moment, please. Yeah, that's fine. And deadline, please, Mr. Generous? The usual 3 weeks?
Sure, that's fine, yeah.
We will follow up, but the clerk will follow up with the exact details.
Thank you, Chair. So, fundamentally, your department is responsible for assessing value for money in the context of procurement. I understand that to be part of your responsibilities, and I've been able to find a list of apps that were developed under the previous Harper Conservative government, apps that are complex in nature, apps like the CRA Business Tax Reminder app, the CBSA e-Declaration app, Canadian Armed Forces app, etc. All of these apps were developed, in most cases, for well under $500,000, in one case for closer to $3 million. This particular app was developed at costs that were dramatically out of proportion with the costs of other apps that have been developed previously under the previous government. Doesn't this suggest that your department failed to do its job in terms of achieving value for money? Ms. Durgan, did you want to intervene on that?
I don't have any visibility on that. With respect to value for money, I work on individual contracts, and we do our due diligence with respect to, competitive processes and,
Okay, so who's looking at the value for money piece then? Is that
I'm afraid that's our time.
My colleague across the table, Mr. Souza, stated that none of the work can be subject to price increases once it's assigned. It's just private companies negotiating over the slice of the pie, and the government can't increase the task value once it's assigned. But that's clearly not true. We've seen task prices absolutely balloon after their bottler, that when Dalian was brought in through a pass-through and demanded 15% for doing so, CBSA was pissed, is what he said, at the resulting price increase. And that email is public. I want to clarify all of this on the record because I find it very inaccurate, and I want Canadians to hear the truth on this.
Mr. Chair, as was mentioned earlier by some of our team members, when the contract is initially set up, there are rate guides within there, and in administering task authorization subsequent to those contracts, they have to respect those limits.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the fact that we don't know. There is no limit on how many people can take a cut of a contract. Have you done an analysis on this, on the ArriveCan app, on how much commission went out in the total value of the 54 million spent on the ArriveCan app?
We have not undertaken that analysis.
Would it be something that PSPC could do and then report back to the committee?
Mentioned before, we had set fixed limits for the resources. We see what the invoicing is based on those fixed limits, but I do not have the information below what has been invoiced on the fixed rates to determine who got paid what. Those are internal business relationships between prime contractors and their subcontractors.
And I think the public has every single right to know the answer to that question. And I agree, with my colleague, Mr. Kuzmirchuk, about the value and appreciation we have for the work that you've done and the commitment all of you have made to Canada. It's really hard to be in a committee setting and be pressing you like this, but people are struggling and they're not getting the answers they need. And I have to say, I've heard this isn't good for the morale of public servants when they hear a company taking $11 or $10 million slice of $55 million in contracts when they're not even experts in that field. Are you looking at fixing it to bring in-house the capacity to, and replace these subcontractors that don't have the expertise to do that work on behalf of Canadians in-house? Are you looking at doing that?
Sorry. Again, Mr. Chair, each project, each IT arrangement is done within the authorities of a department. Departments will determine what's the best way to actually deliver that and what resources they can have. I will just say that some projects require very specific skill sets that a single department would not typically have, nor would it make sense for them to engage and to employ for a significant period of time.
I have time for one last question. Ms. Dutt, she sent an email 2 weeks before that email. CBSA was looking at, helping support their project and actually looking at assigning more additional resources. She sends an email. The next day, her contract gets cut. Do you not see that as reprisal from the government of Canada? The timing just looks obvious that it's reprisal. Is this common?
Mr. Chair, I cannot comment on that. I have no knowledge about it.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Johns. Ms. Kusi, please.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Chan, I'm looking at the email from Ritika Dutt on Friday, May 26, where she states, while work was done for the implementation of Bottler's solution in the CBSA, we did not agree or consent to be named on this TA or for the work to be implemented under this specific TA. Since our personal information has been used by Caradix to implement the task authorization, we are requesting that Caradix produce any documentation claiming to contain our consent to be named as resources in this TA. We also request documentation of alleged correspondence and feedback between Bottler and Caradix during the implementation of this TA, including naming Patrick Van Ambiba as a resource based on Bottler's feedback. I then look at your response, Ms. Chen, on June 5th, Monday, June 5th, 2023, in an email back to Ms. Dutt, which states, in light of the facts presented to us, Canada has determined this matter is an issue between the three parties, yourself, the contractor Dalian Enterprises, and Caradix Technology Consulting in joint venture, and the third party, GC Strategies. No further action required on our part. When you got that initial email from Ms. Dutt, who did you consult with?
Thank you for the question. I consulted with our legal advisor at Justice.
Okay, did you consult with anyone else on your team? Did you consult with Ms. Durrigan? Did you consult with
Yes.
Mr. Mills?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and what was their recommendation at that time?
To investigate the matter and bring it up to Dalian and Carotics.
Okay, but who made the final decision that this wasn't that this wasn't the problem of CBSA, that you could resolve yourself at? Who made the final decision that you could simply say back to Bottler that, you know, we wash our hands of this, we consider the case closed from our part, you're going to have to work it out with the other individuals? Who made that final decision?
It was a collective decision.
Who made the final decision? There must have been one person that said to you, Ms. Chan, you know what, we're not going to deal with this. We're not going to get involved. This is the way it is in the government Canada. People get paid outlandish amounts. This is the way contracting is. We just sign the sections. You know, I was very fortunate to be with Global Affairs Canada for close to 15 years. I was a management consular officer there. I've been through procurement strategies. The training, certainly, I'll admit I haven't received the extent to which you have, but it's very clear, the outlines for what classifies for a sole proprietorship, when these conditions are not met, what it is. That when there is a contract you are drawing from with a preferred supplier, you know, that it is astounding that these contracts were 4 times over the amount. The rules are very clear. They're very precise. But at the same time, we have our own judgment as individuals and as teams, where we go, this doesn't make sense. This is an outlandish amount, or this doesn't make sense. And at some place, the buck has to stop, and it's somewhere someone has to take responsibility. So who made the final decision that it was not for you to decide? You can wash your hands of it, your organization could wash your hands of it, and you could just write that note to Ms. Dutt and say that that Canada is not involved, and you have to work it out with these other 3 shady companies.
I will repeat myself that it was a collective decision that was based on the evidence that were provided by the contractors. That was also in consultation with our legal advisor. I came to that conclusion. I shared that conclusion with my supervisors, Ms. Mansour, Ms. Durgan. We all 3 of us agreed. I executed and I sent the email.
Okay, so you're taking personal responsibility for that. I have some more news for the committee. In that June 5th email, it does say Canada has determined. Well, Canada, as outlined under the Government of Canada buy and sell website, that Canada is defined as His Majesty, the King, in right of Canada, as represented by, wait for it, the Minister of Public Works and Government Services. So Canada is someone. It is a minister, and they are ultimately responsible for what has happened here today, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, with my remaining time, I would just like please to check in on the situation with Mr. Doan, who, of course, appeared before this committee previously, and we had discussed, based upon the outcome of his initial appearance, that we'd be interested in having a further conversation with him. Where are we at, please, with his appearance?
We have not set a date or a request or an invite to him just yet.
Okay. We'll be doing that.
We'll send in an invite, yes.
Okay.
And the other ones were, I understand, the other ones named the other day were, we'd agreed there'd be a summons for them.
Okay.
But for Mr. Doan, it would be an invite.
Okay. Has he showed any reluctance to appear? Because if there is, I'm ready to present a motion to summons him.
We have not contacted him yet.
All right.
I do worry that, as we've seen, a fair amount of reluctance for witnesses, period, to show up today.
Okay. Well, I hope he's listening and he understands that he certainly can be summoned, as other individuals have been. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Talk, please.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of housekeeping matters to you, Mr. Mills. You referenced that a number of people within the PSPC received bonuses. Would you please table all the names of all employees at PSPC who received bonuses during the ArriveCan creation, implementation, that period of time, please? Would you do that?
Mr. Chair, I'll take back to see what we can do in terms of presenting information about the compensation of public servants. I believe some of it's public, but I will take back in terms of what.
I'm specifically asking for the bonuses.
Well, the bonuses are part of the compensation package of public servants under our compensation arrangements. Yes, so
So
I'll take that back.
you'll do that then, sir?
I will endeavor to take back. I'm not sure from a privacy perspective if I can.
You're
make
public
that-
servants.
Yeah,
There's
I'll
no
take
privacy issue here. Would you further table the NDAs that should have been signed by the bottler company, The Resources, for TA 2021002043?
Mr. Chair, I'll have to take that under advisement, see if we have them. So.
All right, take that for now. Ms. Chan, going back to my line of questioning about all the consultations you had with the DOJ, during any of that period of time, did any memo, did any direction, did any telephone call, any email go to the actual minister? At that point was Helena Jazik. Did anything go to Minister Jazik during that period of time?
I do not have visibility on that, so not to my knowledge.
Okay. Now, my last line of questions can be answered by anybody. Globe and Mail on November the 7th reported that President Aaron O'Gorman of the CBSA had asked on November the 3rd, had asked PSPC, and that they agreed to temporarily suspend all CBSA contracts with GC Strategies, Coridex, and Dalian, that the suspension could last up to 180 days. Although these allegations and investigations are not about ArriveCan, she says, I recognize the ongoing audits and investigations may yield findings relevant to that procurement. Now, Canada found out, all of Canada found out on October the 4th, 2023, through another Globe and Mail story, that the RCMP was investigating GC Strategies as the sole source contract with the CBSA and bottler, based on the evidence heard regarding the offenses of forgery and fraud were under consideration. Yet 20 days later, October the 24th, PSPC invites GC Strategies to tender on a temporary help service request. Why? Why? You knew they were under RCMP investigation, and you're inviting them to tender yet again. And this is for, get this, computer support on a temporary basis, asking a two-person company who works out of their basement, who doesn't provide any service, who's under criminal investigation, to tender on this. Why?
Mr. Chair, we currently have a number of supply arrangements and methods of supply to which GC Strategies is currently a member of those methods of supply. When a requirement comes in under the rules, in some cases, the contracting officer is required to go to every qualified supplier on those instruments and ask for a proposal. So in this case, it would have been...
Regardless of whether or not they've received national attention under criminal investigation, you know full well they've lied at committee. Mr. Firth has lied at committee. He's committed the act of forgery and fraud with respect to changing resumes, and your department thought it prudent to include him in a tendering process, knowing full well that he doesn't have staff. Why couldn't you simply reach out? This is for temporary staff. Why couldn't you put an advertisement on LinkedIn or an advertisement on the internet asking for help? Why did you need a consultant to do your basic work? Why?
Mr. Chair, these instruments have been put in competitively. Many firms have bid these, have spent time to get on these arrangements. The requirement, I'm not familiar with the full details, but I can imagine that a requirement came in for services under this instrument, and our procurement officers would have administered the instrument as per the rules. As we mentioned before, they're under GC Strategies is under investigation, but they are still member of these instruments.
That's our time.
Thank you, Chair. To all of the witnesses, was Minister Jazik involved in any discussions? Did she receive any briefing notes, any information, ask any questions regarding the ArriveCan procurement?
Mr. Chair, I'm not recalling briefings that I participated in. I'm not sure aware of any that Mr. Jacek was involved with.
She's the minister responsible for procurement. This was a relatively high-profile project. Surely, did she ask any questions? Would it have been normal to let the minister know what was going on? I'm getting long pauses here. It's a little bit surprised.
So, Mr. Chair, at the time when a lot of these early procurements were going on for ArriveCan, the focus was certainly in the early days of the pandemic around acquiring PPE.
Yeah.
It was about inquiring about getting vaccines, about getting tests and testing.
Sorry, I know a filibuster when I see one. Was Minister Jacek informed of did she receive any briefing notes? To your knowledge, like it's a pretty simple question. Either she was kept completely in the dark and didn't ask any questions, or she was aware it was going on. Which is it?
So I believe she would have seen some products, such as our contracts that would have been done under COVID authorities, and so a number of the contracts. But the initial contracts,
including ArriveCan or not?
The initial contracts that were put in place with GC Strategies predated Minister Jacek.
Okay, Minister Mills, can you just answer the question? Did Minister Jacek ask any questions, ask for information, receive any information? Would that have been normal or expected?
Mr. Chair, to my knowledge, I was not asked to provide any briefing on ArriveCan to Minister Jacek. Whether someone else in the department, whether the deputy minister, I would not be aware.
You didn't see any briefing notes go up. You didn't get any questions from her or receive any information at all. She said either profoundly and curious about this relatively important project of the Government of Canada. Does that seem surprising to you?
Sorry, I just don't recall. I have to go back and look at my records.
Okay, could you reply to that question in writing to this committee? Thank you. I just want to confirm again, is it your department's job to ensure that taxpayers get value for money? Is that part of your mandate?
Mr. Chair, it is part of our mandate.
Excellent, great. So when you look at the fact that $54 million was spent on this app, and as I outlined earlier, you look at the fact that various comparable apps that were prepared under the previous Conservative government were done for much lower costs, generally under $500,000, in one case going up to $3 million. We're talking orders of magnitude more money. Did you look at this contract and say, this isn't value for money? Or did you look at it and say, yep, sounds fine, stamp?
Mr. Chair, I think has been provided to this committee before. There's 46 different contracts that were used to produce the work related to.
Yeah, again, Mr. Mills,
but it's not a single contract for $54 million to build an app.
Can we answer the question? $54 million obviously sums up the work that was done on ArriveCan. So the question wasn't for sort of a regurgitation of process. You looked at the various contracts. Did you say, yeah, value for money looks good, or did you do what your job is supposed to be and ask some questions about this not achieving value for money?
At the beginning of the endeavor to build the ArriveCan app, we were not aware that there would be 46 contracts leveraged to actually undertake all the work necessarily internal to adjust systems, to actually design and to deploy the app on many platforms. So that analysis was not done at the beginning because we were not aware.
But at any point, so we established at the beginning that the minister was sort of incurious about this and unengaged from the process. Did at any point anyone in your department, in her office, herself, say, hey, we got a job to do, which is achieve value for money, not just put a rubber stamp on everything? Did anyone at any point say, this is not achieving value for money, guys?
Mr. Chair, I cannot speak for everyone in our department in terms of who was analyzing the overall value for money.
Did anyone at any point?
I'm afraid that is our time.